We have a very a good panel to talk about innovation, technology, and data in urban setting. And this panel is made of two mayors, one from America and one from Africa, and one representative of the bank, and one representative of a research center. Will be also be talking about energy and mobility in cities. So it's really a pleasure for me to welcome the panelists that will be discussing about the issue of innovation and technology in city. How are we preparing city to reach, to achieve the SDG 7 by 2030, but most importantly, how are we going to achieve the net zero carbon by 2050? So basically, this will be the discussion of today, and I will want to sort of start by just making some statement related to the report that is being launched today, which is called Innovation, Technology, and Data in achieving the SDG 7 and also the net carbon zero by 2050. In this report, one of the main findings was the fact that we realized that 50% of the technology that will help us to meet the 2050 targets are still in the early stage of development and demonstration. At the same time, we also realize that there is a need for research, more research and development. There is also need for more investment in the area of research and innovation in energy, because if we are to achieve the universal energy access, we really need to change the type of technology that are today in the market. At the same time, we also realize that in order to, in terms of resources are there. Perhaps in some cases, what is missing is the political will. And therefore, the report also recommends that we need to align energy innovation, governance, and international cooperation with that will help us to meet the target that I've just mentioned earlier. At the same time, we also need to increase the demand for clean and sustainable energy technology by investing more on innovation. And it was also recommended in this report that there is a greater need to leverage digitalization for innovation while addressing the digital divide. And by the digital divide, here I mentioned the fact that there are part of the world that have access to the data and they are using it properly, whereas other parts are not doing so because they lack resources. They also lack the technology to do so. And lastly, one of the finding and perhaps one of the recommendation of this report was also the fact that we need to avail data. We need to make sure that data that are collected, managed, should also be made available to all the world so that we can actually thrive in the innovation and also in the technology, but most importantly, increase energy access for the urban poor on one side, and also increase energy and resource efficiency in the advanced world. So those are some of the recommendations that the report that is being launched today will put forward. But now, let me present my panelists, my distinguished panelists. We have Mr. Matthew Jordan Tank, who is the Director of Sustainable Infrastructure Policy and Project Preparation. That is with us today. We will be bringing the perspective of the bank. Then we have Mr. Fen Ang, which is the founder and director and executive director of Innovation Center for Energy and Transportation from China. He will also bring the perspective of e-mobility and energy and transport. He will explain to us how the center that he's leading is proposing solution not just for advanced countries but also developing countries. And then we have two distinguished mayors, Mr. Svante Myrick, the mayor of city of Ithaca, that is in New York, will also be sharing with us the experience of his city towards promoting sustainable development. And finally, and not least, Madam Rohe Malik Lowe, the mayor of the city of Banjul, the capital city of Gambia, which has really graced us by coming, and at least so that at least we also have the perspective from African countries. So now, without delaying, I just want to sort of ask, maybe let me start by the mayor of Banjul, and just she has been attending this conference. My question to you is, what are the key challenges faced by local government as far as innovation and technology in energy sector are concerned? How is Banjul addressing this issue? Madam
Thank you
Mayor,
very
you
much.
have the floor.
Thank you very much. And first and foremost, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me, and also to say hello to my distinguished colleagues and all protocols observed there. I think the problem that we are having or facing in Banjul here, I will start by saying that policies for change is the problem. The problem, and I will have to take this in the perspective of Africa, the problem that Africa have for a change, especially when we talk about innovation, technology, and data, is all about having the political will. It's all about having the political will. Here, when we talk about energy, innovation, and technology, it's very crucial because it supports our living and the energy services delivered. But again, I will put much more emphasis to say that the political will is also very important. The technology, which are very pivotal human needs through manufacturing, construction, communication, feeding, transportation, etc., you name it, which are important for our economic prosperity. But again, I will put emphasis to say that all these problems that we are having, especially in the context of Banjul, is the political will for a change. It's a political will for a change. We have realized, Honorable Moderator or Chairperson, that affordable and clean energy matters in our everyday lives in order to function smoothly and develop equitably. For instance, statistics have shown that around 50% of Gambians still don't have electricity, and about 80% of us still use firewood and coal for our daily working, which is the most commonly used energy consumption. Thus, I believe there is need for innovation for low carbon technology needs, more focus in developing countries, especially in Africa, because the continent is growing, which means there will be an increase in energy consumption. Therefore, innovative solutions that will meet our needs, such as better electricity, access, and more will significantly help our environment and economics as well. When we change for a better electric access, this helps not only the people, but it helps the environment and the economy. But again, I will put emphasis by saying the political will is the problem. Furthermore, Mr. Moderator, the linkage of SDG 7 with the other sustainable development goals should be emphasized, especially in accessing water, food security, education, and our economic growth as emphasized by the International Energy Agency. Innovation, Mr. Moderator, will be an important element in achieving these goals. Clean energy, technology, innovation, and of course, data can play a role in building more sustainable cities, sustainable industries, and resilient infrastructure. Therefore, this is why my council has been able to amplify the work of the government in her efforts to promote renewable energy strategies and its efforts in working with civil society organizations in advancing a clean energy policy through the trainings organized by the Banjul EU project that we are implementing at this moment. Clean energy, Mr. Moderator, honorable colleagues, technology, innovation, and data are important now for our future. And I hope we invest in it to make it a reality. I therefore would like to put emphasis again by urging the African politicians to have the will for change. I thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. You made it very clear. You highlighted the need for cleaner technology. You mentioned the low access to energy. You talk about 50% only of the population that have access to energy, meaning that the other rest of the population do not have access to electricity. You also mentioned the fact that 80% are still cooking using biomass and charcoal. This is very clear. You really highlight the need that it is important that innovation has to be put in place so that we remove these people. I mean, we bring cleaner technology to people. This is very, very, very much welcome. And again, you kept emphasizing on the political will, which is very important, because without political will, there is no way. And this is particularly important because in some places where the resources are there, these resources are being used for doing other things, and you really focus on it. That's why also in the report, we are also talking about the innovation in governance. So I want to go back to Matthew and say, yes, Matthew, you are from the bank. I know you have over 50 cities where you are promoting sustainable city development plan. And can you bring some perspective there and share with us how you have been putting in place, you have been funding some strategy energy action plan or strategy so that the mayor of Banjul could also learn from that experience and perhaps also looking into the issue related to technology and innovation that is the topic of today.
Sure.
Matthew, you have the floor.
Thank you, Vincent. Well, let me first start off by thanking UN Energy for inviting me and the EBRD, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, to this very distinguished panel and the topic of great importance. I think I'll start off by just making a few comments following the excellent remarks by the mayor of Banjul. I think firstly, when you're thinking about how to overcome some of these challenges, what we've seen is that cities, you know, they need to start to grapple with trying to think outside of the particular sectors that they're in, where they deliver municipal public services, whether it's water or transportation, and so on. It really helps them to sort of think laterally, cross-cutting, to when they're, for example, trying to bring in green energy, green electricity, you know, produced by renewables, into the municipal utilities. So that's a way of decarbonizing these services. There are, you know, the fortunate thing is, and what we've seen through our Green City program that we started in 2016 is, and I'll talk a little bit about that. We saw that is a key to start to think holistically about what you're doing in your city. To be able to build up this program, the heart of it is what we call the Green City Action Plan planning process. It's a plan that has a very widespread stakeholder engagement. Many you know, groupings in each individual city are brought together, whether it's the citizens to start with, the companies that do the municipal utilities, the public services, whether it's the private sector who make investments and provide jobs, the civil society, et cetera. They all come together to create that Green City Action Plan. And at the heart of it, at the end of it, which is facilitated by the EBRD and our donors, is to basically have prioritized investments that are aligned with the criteria to produce the green outcomes. So the kind of quid pro quo of this is that EBRD provides this with our expertise and our knowledge and best practice sharing. The cities commit to going through with the action plan, and the prioritized investments are then actually realized, and they're realized on the downstream with EBRD financing and others that we bring in and mobilize into this as well. So that is the kind of contract that we have between the upfront planning and the downstream financing. We have 49 cities. We're almost at 50 now. 44 green project investments, 800 million invested, and we're pushing towards about 2 billion investment level over the next 3 years. So that's been really important to sort of commit and follow through, and it's been very, very successful so far. It's been up and running for 5 years, and we're really keep gaining momentum, and it's been excellent. Now let me make a few comments about technology. We have seen over the last, you know, we started the Green Cities program, we realized that many of the types of green projects that we were, you know, prioritizing and that our cities want to do, in the planning of those, the digital element, the digitalization element, the smart city element actually goes hand in hand with the green investment. So when you think of mobility, you know, the only way to deliver this kind of enhanced mobility actually is through a digital app. You know, that enables the green outcome to happen. If you think of saving water and being more efficient about water, well, it really helps to have sensors all along the water network to measure the amount of leakage in the water pipes and that type of thing. If you want to understand where heat is being lost in buildings, you know, in the part of EBRD in Eastern Europe, there's very cold winter seasons. You know, having imagery from infrared that's done by drones, you can actually see where the loss is in the buildings and the networks. And so the digital part is really, it's just such an enhancement. We're seeing that it can save anywhere between 5 and 25% on operational costs. For energy networks, the balancing that can be done, and as we improve and bring in more and more renewables, you need these dynamic energy management systems of the demand, and those are very, very important to spread the demand and enhance the investment. So we've seen this across the board. We have many different kinds of examples, and if we have time, I can talk about them later. But it's a very small investment in digital upfront. And it's an outsized type of benefit for the operations and the quality of the services for citizens. And so it's just a critical part of it. We see green and smart going hand in hand together. Back over to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Matthew, for this for presenting the work that the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is doing as far as Green City is concerned. I like this emphasis, the emphasis you put on Green City Action Plan, which basically transitioning from what the mayor of Banjul was mentioning, saying that the lack of political will sometimes is also a lack of policy in place, proper policy in place, so that people can sort of follow up, can look at it and ask questions. And say, yes, you promised to do A, B, C, and D, and this is your action plan. You say you'll do this by starting from here, and how are you implementing it? And ask questions. And perhaps sometimes this plan do not exist, and it may be this is the solution for Gambia and also for other African cities. I just also wanted to mention that the Covenant of Mayor for Energy and Climate, one of their key action is really to help municipality to develop their climate action, climate and energy, sustainable energy access and climate action plan, so that they have a starting point, they have a roadmap to follow. But again, you also mentioned, talk about the smart city and the use of the digital tool to really reduce our the wastage of energy and other resources, which is very important. I may mention example whereby just by putting some smart meter, people are enjoying because they are just paying for what they are using, they are consuming in terms of water. They are not paying for the leakages that are happening along the road. So this is good. With this, I will just transition to Mr. Fen Ank and ask him what is the perspective. I know that there are two major elements in cities, two major sectors that really consume energy in cities, and this is the building sector and the transport sector. Mr. Fen, can you really explain to us what your center is doing so that to not only reduce the energy consumption for the transport sector, but also reduce the emission and also push forward towards e-mobility? The floor is yours, Mr. Fen.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. So we are a think tank with office in Los Angeles, California, and Beijing, China. So we focus on the clean energy and the clean transportation. So we are concerned about the intersection between energy and mobility, especially for the developing economy. Its access to the clean and affordable mobility, and for developed countries, it's more about the transition from a current oil addict system to sustainable e-mobility. The transportation is the fastest growing source of carbon emissions and air pollution in developing economy. So if you heard all this horrible story about air quality crisis, cities in like New Delhi, India, and Beijing, China. So this is the big source of urban air quality pollution. Also, is the largest source of carbon emissions and oil consumption from the developed economy. So I think when the country developed from from the emerge from the underdevelopment to developed economy, is transitioning to more like oil dependence and the contribution share, carbon emission share from the transportation sector growing very rapidly. For example, the China currently have 10% of carbon emission from transportation sector. So, but in the state of California, it's close to 40% carbon emission is from the transportation sector. So if you, as a developing country, rapidly motorize itself, you see the rapid motorization, because I see China, 20 years ago, there's only like 2 million vehicle population in China altogether, but today is over 350 million vehicles. So the same trend taking place in Africa and in Central America, all the developing economies. So that's the big problem. And so the access to the mobility, especially sustainable mobility, I think clean and sustainable mobility, I think is a huge challenge, especially for mega cities, especially for many underprivileged living in the big mega cities. I think for the local governments, number one is to provide cheap, clean and cheap public transportation to the masses. And also, to transition to clean and e-mobility with affordable cost. We can see we see innovation and technologies taking place in the e-mobility sector nowadays provide excellent alternative options for the oil addict status quo system. But I think for developing countries, you need to manage that transition, because the e-mobility electric vehicles still are much more expensive. And so I think a lot of effort by developing countries are focused on provide clean diesels, clean LNGs, clean fuel-based buses and the vehicle infrastructure. But as the world rapidly transition to electric vehicles, I think there's a lot of study suggests that the electric cars and the electric buses, their price will be on par, reach parity with the diesel and gasoline vehicles in 5 to 10 years. So in that process, I think that the developing country need to be very careful to manage, to have a strategic plan, make sure they do not lock in, because 10 years is very short, quick time, right? So if you invest heavily in the fossil fuel based system, right? But in 5 to 10 years, then the electric option become more competitive and appealing. So I think you may find that you were invested in the fossil fuel based transport system. So I think that's why, even though it appears to be more expensive right now, but I think you have the government that need to have a vision, to make sure that 5 to 10 years down the road, the cities can rapidly transitioning to the e-mobility, which is really the big, you see all Teslas, all the big revolution taking place. So I think the developing economy need to be, well aware of these trends, the mega trends.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Fent, for that statement. We are seeing in Africa what is happening now, that there are some relocation of car manufacturer, diesel, petrol car manufacturer, because, like you mentioned the case of China. Just 20 years ago, you talk about less vehicle on the ground, and then the number moved from 2 million vehicles to 350 million vehicles that are on the ground now. So yes. Consider if this happened also in the African context, we'll see the emission will shift from developed world to developing countries, which is not the case. We have also here some countries that like Germany or Norway, that they don't want to see any fossil fuel car on their roads coming 2030. But we are not seeing this commitment yet in developing countries. And what you are saying is it's better to invest now on e-mobility, even if it's very expensive, than to invest on technology that will be obsolete just in few times now. So it's very important, this statement. You also mentioned about public transportation, that we need to Perhaps the government need to reduce the fee so that more people can use public transport, and then shifting from the private car to public cars. And that is also one of the good solutions that we can put in place to reduce the emission and also increase affordability. This is very well. I think it's really contribute to the debate. And I would like now to ask His Worship, the Mayor of the city of Ithaca, to now, after listening to this, the presentation from the three panelists, from the Mayor of Banjul presenting the problem there, the type of problem they are facing, from the European Investment Bank, also the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, saying what they are doing with their cities. I just want and also from Mr. Feng, explaining the importance of e-mobility. What is the city of Ithaca doing as far as energy and innovation in technology is concerned?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the question. Thank you for the opportunity. I want to appreciate our host for having us here today. Thank you, Matthew, Mayor Feng, and Vincent. Vincent, very artfully done, seemingly in the first three panelists, has pulled together the three legs of the stool that are necessary to get to carbon neutrality, right? And the mayor's comments about the necessity of political will. Matthew's talks about the necessity of financing, capitalization, and Feng's points about the necessity of technology. Putting those three together, using the political will to drive capital towards technology, is how we're going to achieve our goals of carbon neutrality by 2050. But we also, here in the city of Ithaca, for those who don't know, Ithaca is a college community, home to Cornell University, Ithaca College, and Tompkins Cortland Community College. What does it mean to be a college community? It means that we are quite young, right? The average age here is just over 20 years old in our entire metro area. That means that by 2050, they will be 50 years old, right? By 2050, I will be 64. The urgency that we feel around this issue, the necessity to preserve our ecology, to make life for humans as we know it, sustainable well into the future, is very real and very palpable here, which is why we've set a goal even more ambitious than 2050. In the Green New Deal resolution passed by our Common Council just last year, we committed to achieving community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030, while also addressing many of the historic inequalities and inequities between men and women, between people of color, and the majority community here in our city. How are we going to do that? Well, we don't know for sure, but we know that it will be combined forces of political will, capital, and technology. And some of the technologies we know, right? And some of the political will has already happened. Just last month, our Common Council also passed our new green building policy, right? These are strict new requirements. In fact, the strictest and most progressive in our state, possibly in the entire country. What does it mean? It means that by 2 years from now, anything built in the city of Ithaca has to be 80% carbon reduction from the current standards. And by 2026, anything built has to be entirely carbon neutral, right? Now, how do we do that for new buildings? And the bigger question, of course, is how do we do that for all of the 12,000 or so existing buildings in our city? Well, again, that's where the capital and the technology comes in. Some of this technology we already know. We already know what it's going to take in terms of renewable energy sources, solar especially. We know that that has to become more efficient. There's got to be better battery storage. There's got to be better collection, better farms. We also know that the buildings themselves have to be electrified, right? We've got to retrofit these buildings using things like heat pumps. So we're not waiting for some crazy sci-fi future technology. We already know what the technologies are. The question is, how do we pay for it? How do we finance it? And I think that there's two secrets to that. One is the size. If we do this building by building, we will not meet our goals, but we'll also have a hard time convincing individuals and companies to take the risk to pursue the capital required to do this changeover. So we've got to do it sort of all at once. And the second thing we've got to do is de-risk the entire enterprise by putting our own money where our mouth is. That is to say, using city resources to guarantee some of the loans that could get us full electrification of all of our buildings by 2030. If we do that, while at the same time hiring the many, many hundreds of people we think it will take to electrify all of our buildings, we can achieve our goal of carbon neutrality while also reducing inequities and inequalities. So energy efficiency is obviously important. Decarbonization of the electric grid, electrification and carbon capture, those are all key to the transition. But in order to achieve those, as the mayor pointed out, engagement. If people know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and the benefits it would bring to the entire community, if they know how we're paying for it, that is, if we're being transparent and we communicate, then we start having a conversation about incorporating enabling technologies. So you'll find then a way of unlocking finance and incentivizing investment with mass programs, right? Which by virtue of the scale of their implementation will reduce the perception of risks for both investors and for the community. Our incredible new sustainability director, Luis Aguirre Torres, has brought such experience, wisdom, energy, and humor into his role. And this is really important for cities that want to take this leap, is to find the right talent, right? You have to find people who are interested in leaning in and working on this. And he's launched an initiative called 1,000 Conversations about the Green New Deal. So we are pulling in people, telling them that this is not something that your government is doing to you. This is something the community would like to do together. And I believe if we do that, if we start, as the mayor said, with building political will, with building education and engagement, then we can follow it with the financing and the capital we need to achieve the technologies that will get us to carbon neutrality.
Thank you so much, the mayor, and also it's very important to hear that your city, I mean, the average age is a young city, and with all these the vision that you have, you want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. Congratulations for that. And this is really what this panel is all about, to how are you doing it? And I like the way you summarize the discussion, and perhaps from the political will, the financing, the capital, the technology, but I may also add the education, awareness. How do we involve the community around this? How do we inform them? So this is really, really important. Now I was looking to see whether we have any question from the participant. The Secretariat, if they can help us to see. I see no question yet, but perhaps I'll just give you back the floor 1 minute each. If I may ask you, what action should we take home? Starting from the mayor of Ithaca. What action? Just you have 1 minute so that we can just close the session with this 1 minute. Each of you will have 1 minute. I'm sure the Secretariat will give us a couple of minutes more so that we just finalize.
Well, what I believe is that at the local level, we have to begin, and we have to begin to set very ambitious goals. You know, President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, once told a story as he was exhorting our nation to go to the moon. He told a story of two boys running through an orchard, and they reach a wall that they can't get over, right? But there's apples on the other side they want. The one boy looks at the other, takes off both of their hats, throws them over the wall. And the second boy looks at him and says, "Why did you do that? How are we going to get over the wall?" The first boy says, "I don't know, but now we have to." And I think if we know the wall that's in front of us, we all know that carbon neutrality is the key to our very survival. We also know that historic inequalities are threatening our way of life and have always been a stain on humanity's existence. We know that we can solve both of these problems. We don't know how, but we have to throw our hat over the wall. We have to commit ourselves. We have to make promises, even if we're not sure that we can keep, how we will keep them in order to ensure that we keep them. I think starting local, making audacious promises and commitments is going to be the key to reaching globally our 2050 goal.
Thank you very much. Local action, global impact. Next, I can ask Matthew, 1 minute.
Sure. Thank you. No, it's great to hear everyone's thoughts and really inspiring. No, I think the thought I would add, the takeaway is think holistically, plan holistically, involve everyone's expertise from both the public sector, the private sector, but probably most importantly, just the ideas of people on the ground, citizens. I mean, it's tremendous, the creative, kind of collective effort that you can bring together. And that is at the heart of building consensus and then following through. And the holistic nature of a planning process is that you don't just plan, you actually do. You actually implement what you've decided to do. And it takes follow through, it takes organization, and yes, it takes money. But I think all of those can be mustered, and I think this is the key to complete the process and go right the way through after you've done all the work up front.
Thank you very much. Mr. Feng, 1 minute.
Yeah. Smart city technologies have huge potential to improve, the urban quality of life in all aspects. And first and the I think city need to embrace the digital technologies in all walks and lives and work. And but it all starts from rebuilding the infrastructure. So each city needs to develop its vision and the strategies and can prioritize their implementation plan to make sure their plan is fit into the future development trends. And so I'm very glad to hear the mayor talk about the Ithaca, talk about the carbon neutrality. I think this has become a global goals, a race to the carbon neutrality by mid-century. I think each city need to plan ahead and to have a strategic plan in place.
Thank you very much. The last one, Your Worship, the Mayor of Banjul, Mrs. Roy Malik, 1 minute.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
What we can take home: political will, better policies, and community advocacy.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much. I just want to thank all of you, all the panelists, for the very fruitful discussion. And just to conclude by saying that this panelist has shown that whatever we do, we need to put we need to start with a proper political will that give us the mandate, the instruction, all the elements, the resources that are needed to achieve carbon neutrality. We also talk about the financing. It is very important. Without financing, we will not go far. And we also talk about the technology. Technology is an enabler. Technology will enable us to address the different challenges that are facing by the city. We saw that it is important to look into the issue of mobility, and because that is a sector that emit a lot of energy alongside with the buildings, and therefore technology, innovative technology is very critical in this sense. And then last point was about educating the population, educating the people. We are working in the city. I mean, whatever we do in the city, we are doing with citizens. They need to be informed. They need also to be consulted. We need to make sure that we get from them we get advice from them, and we also inform them what we are doing. And then at the same time, we need to all have this goal, which is first of all, universal access, making sure that we make sure that those people without access should have access. And that's why it is important to have innovative technology. But at the same time, we should not forget that our main target is carbon neutrality. And we have seen that there are already cities that we want to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. So, Mr. Minoru, I hope I have done my job the way you were expecting. The panel has been really they brought a lot of insight, which will also enrich the debate that we'll be seeing, and perhaps also putting back on track the SDG 7, but most importantly also the net zero carbon Paris Agreement by 2050. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you very much. This was a really lively debate, and I personally also enjoyed very much the discussions during the panel. And thanks, Vincent. It's a superb moderation as usual. Thank you very much for that. With this one, we conclude this panel session in the morning.